This is the weird part, waiting for the schedule to change to live and hoping I don't say something stupid in between. Hi, I'm Caroline Leavitt. I'm the co-founder of Mighty Blaze, the book initiative that was started way back when the pandemic started to help authors who were on tour or not on tour and independent bookstores, which we love, love, love. And I am so completely excited today because we have this amazing guest, Uli Beutter Cohen. She started the Stories from the Subways, and she has this new book out, which is just wonderful. It's called Between the Lines, Stories from the Underground. And what Uli does is she goes into the subways and she talks, she notices people reading books and she talks to them. She asks them about the book, and it's a way of connection. It's a way of doing so many amazing things. Um, Between the Lines, it's a collection of some there. Look at that gorgeous cover. It's a love letter to the subway, actually, and to books, and it's a collection of beloved and never before published stories from over 170 interviews with the most amazing, interesting people. There's great photography of the people holding up their books and book recommendations. There's voices from people you know, like Roxane Gay, Min Jin Lee, and people you don't know that you're going to want to know after this. I'm not the only one who's raving about this book. Esquire says, Between the Lines arrives like manna from heaven. Publishers Weekly in a starred review says, underground wonder. I love that. Chicago Tribune says, an addicting smile of a compendium. That's exactly right. You can't help but read this without sort of grinning. So Uli is also the creator of Subway Book Review, which is a social media movement. It's a new way not just to discover books, but to discover people and find connection with them. She started this in New York City way back in 2014. Subway Book Review has been featured by New York Magazine, Esquire, Glamour, Bustle, Vogue, The Guardian, Refinery 29, The Atlantic, the BBC, and just about everyone everywhere on the planet. She's done writing about human connection, and it's been published by the Washington Post, Here Magazine, the Creative Independent, and Huffington Post. Uli, I'm so thrilled to have you here. We need all the book champions we can, and you are amazing, and the book is amazing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me here, Caroline. I'm thrilled to be here with the Mighty Blazers.
Yeah, so the first question I want to ask is, why the subway? Have you always been in love with the subway? And do you have a favorite subway story of your own that happened before we start talking about subway book series?
Yeah, I mean, the subway is such a special place in New York City because it's a democratic place. All of us ride it. It doesn't matter who you are, at some point or another, you're going to find yourself underground. And as a storyteller, as a documentarian, the subway thrills me to no end because it's one of the places where the city has to stand still and you can actually see your fellow New Yorkers. So for that reason alone, it's a fascinating place. But it is also a moment in time where we're on our way, but we haven't arrived yet. But we're all in transit to a destination. And I think that as someone who came here to New York in her 30s, I came here late, you could say. I, of course, like everyone else, am fascinated by the dreamers who come here and by the natives who seem to just inhabit that quality in their personhood from top to bottom. So when I say that it's people who are on their way, I really mean that in the literal sense, because everybody here is hustling and everybody here is striving and is aspiring and is creating on a very high and exciting level. So of course I wanted to speak to these people, and of course I needed to get in touch with them and connect and find a way. And you know, having been a storyteller and my background is filmmaking, having been in that space for 2 decades, I really wanted to incorporate photography, and I thought the subway is a place that's going to be crazy to photograph, but it turned out that it's actually a very photogenic place.
Yeah.
It has a very specific quality. The light on the subway is very specific. You know exactly where you are. And then, of course, you know, personally speaking, the subway to me when I moved here was terrifying because when I got here, there was no Wi-Fi on the trains. That came much later.
Right.
And the subway is also unpredictable. You may believe that you're entering an A train. In reality, it's an F that has jump tracks.
Right.
Your day has changed. So I think that the subway in and of itself embodies that unpredictable excitement that we come to New York for. And so for all those reasons, the subway was a no-brainer for me. Now, I didn't know that I was going to be speaking to people with books. And at that point, I had no idea that Subway Book Review would exist. But what I did is I started riding the subway without a destination in mind. And I committed to it being the place that I wanted to get very familiar with. Because it was so terrifying to me, because it was such a great unknown. And so I did that. And once I started doing that and became very still and really tuned in with who I was sharing space with, it hit me, like lightning out of the heavens that how many amazing readers were on these trains. And again, no Wi-Fi, so we had more books, right, present, but there's still an abundance of readers, especially now. I see so many good books on the subway again. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
It's having a comeback. I think people have missed riding the subway, and I think people are also realizing that their main reading time actually happens on the subway in New York. So all that to say that once I tuned in and once I became still and once I became aware, that's when it struck me how many readers were there. And of course, I had this notion that they were going to be fabulous examples of New York City, because a reader is someone who's interested in other realities, has empathy, who, is curious and wants to know answers to life's problems. So I decided to speak to them. And 7 years later, here we are.
That's incredible. That's incredible. But it's so interesting that you talked about how the subway seemed so scary at first, because the subways, when I first moved here, were terrifying. I mean, there were gunshots. There were never a cop around. You're right. I laughed when you said you never know what the train is, because you can be on an F train and halfway through the announcement will come on and you can't hear it. It's like, and that's when people are asking each other. Then you find, a downtown train suddenly is an uptown train. So you started doing this, which was incredibly brave, but it's also an incredibly New York City thing to do, because I bet people really respond to that. So I want to ask you about, how did you know, which people to approach? Were there ever people who did not want to talk to you, or they did not want to? Did you just say, "Oh, what are you reading"? Did they think you were trying to pick them up?
No, I don't think they think that I'm trying to pick them up. I'm a professional. This is something that I do as work. It's not a hobby. It's my community service and it's my work. And I'm quite good at what I do. I do say so myself.
Yeah,
I have a very specific way of doing this work and a very specific process. And I immediately let people know that I'm there for them and that I am here to listen. And I think that is a very important thing to do, because that's very rare in New York City, right? When does someone ever come up to you and say, "Hi, I'm just here to listen. What do you want to say?"
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what city you're in. I think in life that doesn't happen enough. We don't make space for each other. We don't make that kind of time for each other, especially in larger cities. I come from a very small community. I grew up in a very small village in Germany, and we're just used to speaking to each other on the street and stopping, and you talk to your neighbors, and you can't go anywhere. If you run into someone who has something to say, then that conversation will be had no matter what. So I think I'm bringing that kind of, maybe small town attitude to a large city, where I really truly do believe that everybody is my neighbor. And how I pick the people, they pick me, in terms of, it's literally like they light up, or their person is calling to me. Oftentimes the person doesn't even have a book in hand, and I go up to them and I say, crazy question, but do you have a book with you? And they say, what? How do you know? And I said, it's just a feeling. What are you reading? And they get into it. And by now the project has some notoriety, so people also come up to me or want to tell me what's on their mind. But that's kind of the beauty of it, is that it's my process in terms of finding people is as unpredictable and as divine as the subway itself is. Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit before we got on to the interview about how, I love that you said it's turning a big city like New York almost into a small town, because I love when I'm just walking through Manhattan and, even in the grocery store, if I see somebody like picking up something, product that I like, I'll say, oh, you know what? That's really good if you do da 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 da. And then you end up having a whole conversation.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing to train yourself to do that, even if you're walking down the street and you see somebody wearing something that's interesting, to say, oh, I love the way you did this and this. Because first of all, you're
100%.
right, people light up because they feel seen, and then you
Yes.
have a connection.
Yeah.
So you have reporters, I read, from 20 different cities around the world, which to me is astonishing. Tell us, how does that work? How does somebody get to be a reporter? And have you noticed any differences in cities and reading habits or willingness of people to talk? How
Yeah.
does that work?
That is bittersweet, because that had to be put on hiatus during the pandemic. I could not with good conscience have anyone on my behalf enter into a situation that may be potentially
Right.
not safe for their health. So we're currently reporting from New York City, and that is me. I'm back to being a one-woman show, which also is how we started. It has always been just myself in New York, and it's kind of really nice as this book is coming out, which is now available in
Book is
all bookstores
beautiful.
near you. Um, which is really a love letter to New York. It's kind of nice to be back to the humble beginnings, where it was really truly just me, with my phone and my recorder, running through the underground. But the contributors, it was a very painstaking, long process to find them. And they were in Mexico City, in London, really truly worldwide. And they would write their own underground systems and then send me their
Lovely.
stories. It was a lot of work. And I think when you create anything that's original, and you make it look easy, people forget how labor intensive it is. And it's good when you can't see the work. It's good when you can see the joy and the fun. And I always say I'm like a magician, and when I show you my sleight of hand, then I've not done my work. And when it just looks magical and entertaining, then I've performed my trick very well. But to get to a point where you don't show your sleight of hand took a lot of practice. And the people who have contributed to Subway Book Review are amazing. And they're, some of them I've never met in real life. I've only talked to them on Zoom, and they are family. And it's really beautiful to see that, people love reading A Little Life, in Mexico, in Paris, and in New York, and it's happening at the same time. Or
That's amazing.
yeah, there are certain books that are just sweeping the world, and I think that is just really beautiful to see.
It unites us. The funny thing too is about, I mean, I love A Little Life. And I know a lot of people who say like, oh, I'm not going to read that because it's depressing or it's sad. And, people wondering, how did a book like that even get published? But the thing is that it touches our humanity, and it's actually very much about love. So it's very hopeful in that way. So I want to talk about the photographs, which I loved. You've got all these people pose with their books, and I thought this is just so great. I loved the photos, and I wanted. Can you just open the book and show us some of the photos? I had computer problems, and I had your book here, and now I don't know where it is, and I wanted to look at those photos. They're just great. Did people pick how they wanted to pose, or did you pose them, or did you find that people actually reveal more than they might have thought they were revealing as they posed?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that I'm showing you still a sampling here. I'm a very visual person, and the people who I choose, I think about representation, of course. I think about handing people the mic who
Great photo.
don't always get the mic handed to them, especially in media, especially in entertainment. And again, this person doesn't know this when they're entering the subway that I'm going to interfere with their day, but we have full-on photo shoots. We have fun. We make it happen until it happens. And
I love it. I love it.
Mary is a person who really doesn't like having her photo taken. And I said, look, just like your story, we're co-creating, because I believe that's very important. And in this day and age, as a white woman, it is very, very important to me that I co-create the stories with the people who trust me with their life, quite literally, that I represent them accurately. So we do the photo shoot, we do the interview, and it's an impromptu photo shoot, but people have fun. Even people who don't like to have their picture taken have fun. And Mary loves this photo, which is such a compliment, Then, of course, you get an icon like Lynn Yeager, who's on the cover right here.
Mm-hmm.
Right here she is. Sorry, this camera is like backwards or something today. So that's, I'm like, where am I? and that's very easy and that's very fun. They come in an outfit, they're dressed, they're ready to go. You have the character, they're wearing it on their sleeves. But the photograph is very important, and it's very important that the person likes how they are coming across. Yes, in text and in photography. Yeah. 100%.
There's one woman, oh God, I forgot her name. Her last name, I believe, is Jean. I loved it that she said, I'm a Caribbean goddess.
Queen
That
Jean,
was how
I will find
yes,
you
yes,
her.
yes, yes. So many of
amazing.
these people were absolutely amazing in the way they revealed themselves and the way they talked about books. I just, yes, that's the photograph. You see that photograph and you think, you know what, she is Caribbean goddess.
Yes,
And I feel
absolutely.
connected to that person.
Yes,
There's also
absolutely. We had Queen Jean and I have become close friends. We met on the streets where all good women meet in protest, because Queen Jean is a leader in the Black trans liberation movement. And
I love it. I love it. I love it. And
yeah,
I loved what she said. I just, the main feeling that I get when I think about your book and reading the interviews is just pure delight and excitement
good.
and possibility. And there's another phrase in your book that I loved, which is every person has to journey into what they are. I thought, that's amazing. That's so full of possibility, and you can be any age and journeying into who you are, who you want to be, who you're meant to be. I just absolutely love that. So I wanted to know about. We were talking a little bit about this before we started the interview. Tell us about you. I saw this thing where you have these publishing workshops, or you had them, and you're going to have them again. And I looked at them and thought, oh my God, I have to take that. Every writer I know has to take this. Tell us about that.
Come on in. The water's warm. Yeah, I think that, in all of my work and in all of my being, I strive to create transparency, because I think that, especially in the book publishing industry, which in many ways it's archaic, and I say this as someone who, has only recently undergone the publication of her first book, but I've been close to the publishing industry for 7 years now and have been adjacent to it. And I speak to many authors, I speak to many writers, their peers and their friends, and their interview subjects sometimes. And there is I will say this very honestly, on every level, on the publisher's end, on the writer's end, there's so much frustration. And that exists because of bad communication and lack of transparency. And I think that all of us who are a part of it need to do the work and need to do our part to make it better and to create a system that is not exploitative to the artist and that is not unsustainable for the publisher, because all of us share one thing, and that's our love for books, because we understand how powerful they are. And we understand as readers what a book wants to do for us, which is it wants to change us as a person, and it wants to create a lasting impression of a time and a place and what was ailing us and what was moving us forward. So we have the same goal, and I think we can get to that goal much more easily if we knew how to journey together a little bit better with a little more ease. And so, yes, I hold a lot of events. I hold a lot of workshops. I recommend signing up for my newsletter, if I may say that.
Oh, yes, please do. Please do. Tell us the...
Yeah, it's on my website,
Okay.
You can also find me on Instagram at Subway Book Review. But I often hold workshops. I often hold events that other people don't hold because it's sometimes a touchy subject, or it's very revealing, or I want to be provocative in what I put out so that it's helpful for other people. And the workshop that you're referring to was called The Wonderful World of Publishing.
Right.
Just kidding. It's not that wonderful. but yeah, we also need to have fun with each other. And it's very important to not take ourselves too seriously in the process, because that's when we can open up and that's when we can learn from each other, which is everything.
Let's talk about that word revealing, because I love that when you talked about like it's revealing, but because I know a lot of writers feel like, well, there are places I can't go. And I always tell my writing students, you know what? If you're afraid of something, that's what you should be writing about, because there's always going to be somebody out there who's going to be saying, oh my God, that's how I feel. Me too, me too, me too. That word revealing, we've made it into a scary word, but actually it's what unites us, I think, right?
It's the best. To reveal something takes courage. And to have courage, you need to love yourself. If you can love yourself, you can love other people. It's very simple, the parts of ourselves that we want to keep hidden are absolutely the most interesting and formative parts of ourselves.
Yes.
And I think that when they feel scary, I understand it, because there's often trauma involved and there's often great pain that lies in those spaces.
That's right.
But I think that it is absolutely also where the answer lies and where the portal lies that you can push through to get to the other side. And I say this as someone, writing this book was absolutely the most exhausting thing that I've ever done. And I say this as someone, it's not my memoir. It's not a novel that I have crafted. It's a co-creation between me and 170 New Yorkers. But what I did in this process is I really truly let them see their story before it went into the final draft. And I made sure
That's great.
that it was absolutely true to what they wanted to reveal. And there were very few people who really pushed back. There was one person who said, I'm so sorry, because she spoke about the NYPD, and the NYPD is a tricky entity to speak about in this day and age. And she said, I can't do it. I can't be public like that with it. And we took the story out. Of course, I would never publish something against someone's wish. And I think that's very important, is to, when you're the guardian of someone's reveal, to handle that with really great care. And when it's your own reveal, to do it very boldly and to do it very truthfully.
Absolutely. I just want to tell everybody out there, don't be shy. You can ask questions and I won't read your name if you don't want me to. A lot of times what happens is because this is always going to live on the Mighty Blaze YouTube station forever. People do come up with questions later, but you can ask them now if you want to.
We're very friendly over here. We're very open. We're very
giving.
Yeah,
you can say, like, you can ask for anything.
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to ask you about, when you were talking more about your publishing workshop, because it goes into the whole thing of, it's not just for writers, but also for readers. And how do we find out about books? And the thing that I loved about what you're doing is we find out about books that we've never heard of, or, that can mean something to us because it meant something to somebody else. Mostly now when people read about books, it's there's usually like 5 or 6 anointed, I call them the anointed books each season, which are everywhere. They're like Entertainment Weekly, they're in the New York Times, they're in this other place. But then, as a book reviewer myself, I often find that books that I love, I might review it for like, the San Francisco Chronicle, and I find that nobody else has reviewed this book. Why not? It's such a great book. And then there'll be a book that'll be everywhere, and I'll think, well, the book is okay, but it didn't speak to me the way this
Yeah.
other book did. So I love that what you're
Mhm.
doing, because somehow I think people are getting a little jaded maybe, and they're more apt to take a recommendation from a real person who has a real reason for loving a book, which is what you brought out.
Well, I think both will happen, right? There is absolutely, we're people, a lot of us are followers. You know what I mean? Like, we just have to say it. If you see something everywhere, you will also want to have it. So
Right.
it's just how human behavior and how human nature works. And that's how bestsellers are made. I mean, how bestsellers are made, we could have a whole episode about that, Caroline, because bestsellers are made with a lot of money. And we just have to say that. That is how a bestseller is made.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you don't have access to money, you'll have a hard time getting it out there, unless you just hit the nail on the head and your story comes out and you happen to hit it in such a timely manner that the topic that you've written about is on everyone's mind. So that also happens. But usually a bestseller is made because there's a lot of money in someone's pocket. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, but in a way that's less depressing than I thought it would be, because then the writer doesn't feel like it's my fault, I wrote a bad book.
Never.
Then you realize,
Never.
no, it's not the writer's fault.
It's
It's just
never
the
the
way the
writer's
business
fault.
is.
It's absolutely, writing and book publishing is a billion-dollar industry, and we forget this. And I said billion, not million. I said a B just now, right? We think that writing is the creative arts, and we treat it like a fledgling creative arts organization that's a nonprofit. It is absolutely not. The book publishing industry is a billion-dollar industry. There is so much money in it, but book publishers are also gamblers, because how they buy books is completely uninformed. They're making guesses. And so money will always follow the money. And we have to remember this. And as writers, and what I mean by that is, if you are a promising entity and you have promise of selling a lot of books, you're going to be given more money, which may be crazy, but that is how it works, and that is how it is. So because there are no other metrics for publishers to understand who's going to return on their investment, right? So it's never the writer's fault. It never means that a book wasn't good enough, or that a writer has not delivered, or that they should never write again if their first book is not a bestseller. And I really say this with conviction, because even getting to publish a book is such an honor, right? But you know what's a greater honor? To pick up your pen every day, or to pick up your pen on a regular basis.
That's
the great honor. That is the great honor, you know? And that is you being in conversation with the universe. And that is what matters. That's truly, I don't get paid to do Subway Book Review. I don't have a secret investor. I'm not owned by some media company. I get paid $0 to have been doing this work for 7 years. Of course, I got paid a book advance, which was modest, considering for how much work went into it, but I was very grateful for it. But I do that work because it fulfills me, and because I believe it's a beautiful community service. If I did it for any other reason, if I did it because I wanted 1 million followers, or because I wanted to get rich, I'd be in the wrong business. The business of story sharing is one that is based on great heart. And if you can lean into that, it will enrich your life endlessly.
That is so inspiring. I actually grabbed my pencil and wrote down, "It's never the writer's fault," because I think you should put that on T-shirts and sell them. I mean, that is like such a great thing because writers always think, well, it's our fault. I should have done this or this, and there's always things like, why didn't I get that? And this other person did, and it's so important what you said, that we have to remember that the pleasure is in the magic of the writing. I mean, what is more wonderful than that? And connecting to other people and talking to them. I have a story that the writer Tayari Jones told us, and this was before she got mega famous. She went out to do a reading in Atlanta, and she said one person showed up. One person showed up, and she said, and there were rows and rows of seats, and they thought there was going to be a lot of people, and there weren't. And she said, okay, well, I'm going to give this one person the appreciation that this person deserves. And she had a long talk with this woman, and the woman, very intimate, and the woman told her how much the book, which was Silver Sparrow, had meant to her and had meant to her whole family. And they became friends. And a month or so later, the woman actually died. But Tyre said that one moment forever just emblazoned in her mind.
She'll
So
never
I think the
forget
thing
it.
is, you never know. You
Yeah.
never know with these encounters, but that's what it's all about.
100%. And I think we're so trained to look for the large numbers these days, right?
Right.
We're trained to look for the largest amount of followers. We're trained to look for the largest amount of likes. We are trained to look for the largest amount of money. And as a person who strives to be anti-capitalist and who is a triple water sign, I'm really striving for the discovery of the best feelings and to experience a wide range of feelings fully and with appreciation. That is what I have based my creative life around. And I think it's very important to not blindly go after what everybody else is going after, but to really
Yes.
set yourself your own guidelines and play within that.
So I want to turn the tables on you a bit and ask you, what are you reading?
I have it right here. I have it right here. I'm reading Wintering by Catherine
I
Day.
love that book. I know that book. I love that book.
Yeah.
What does that book mean to you?
Well, you know what? I'm just starting. I'm currently in the chapter. I'm in November. How fitting, I know. And this book is really the subtitle is The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times. And one of my best friends sent it to me because weeks before my book came out, my feline companion of 18 years passed away and had to be put to rest. And the timing of it was absolutely insane. I tear up a little bit talking about it right now because he was such a big presence in my life, and he was there with me making this book. I work from home right when I'm not in the underground, and losing him during this time of birthing this book project, that dichotomy was so present and it was so felt. And Wintering speaks about what we can find in difficult times and what we can find in loss, but it really beautifully speaks to when we think that things are raw, or when we think that things have died, or when we think that a leaf is shedding its trees and is laying bare before us. That is only partially true, because that tree is already making its new buds for the next blossoms to come. And I think this book, of course, found me at the perfect time, because as I was saying goodbye to my companion, who's still with me all around me, of course, his energy is still here. It was such a beautiful reminder that nothing is ever lost, and that everything is a cycle, and that our entire life is a cyclical experience. So that is what I'm really getting from this book. And it's beautiful. And I'm reading it slowly and I'm savoring it. And I have bookmarked, so many pages, and I have underlined so many spots already. And I think that Yeah, it's a great book to get in touch with death and with birth and with just like not being so hard on ourselves when we're experiencing either one of those things.
See, to me, that's what's so great about what you do. That's kind of a multimedia exploration of a book that gets to me in a way that, say, a review about the plot and what you did well and what you did doesn't would not. To me, hearing you talk about that, I mean, I know that book and I love that book, but I think for everybody out there listening, like, don't you want to read that book? Also, everybody out there listening, if you want to tell Uli about a book that you're reading now or that you like, you can just pop the title
Pop it in.
into the thing.
I'll
It's
tell
like,
you another one that I just picked up, Heartberries,
wow, Heartberries. I don't know that one.
which I think will be a beautiful companion. I think it will be a really it's a shorty, but it feels like it's going to be very powerful. So I'm trying to find the right time to read it, but I want to read it in concert with wintering. You know, when you do that, when you find books and their companions and they want to sing
Yep.
together, this is what this feels like. And this is a memoir of a woman's coming of age, an indigenous woman's coming of age, having survived a really dysfunctional upbringing and coming to terms with her PTSD and her bipolar disorder. And again, I think wintertime, and when we're thinking about these cycles, it's so important to understand what cycle you're personally in and to get in
Mm-hmm.
touch with your
Right.
shadow self and to look at the parts of you that are rough and that feel raw and that feel like maybe they're ready to die or like they're ready to be rebirthed. And I think that's what this book stands for. And I'm
Can
very
I just
excited by
interrupt to ask you, what do you mean by shadow self? What's our selves?
Oh, our shadow self is the part of us where the thing lies that you say your writers want to shy away from. That is where our trauma
Oh,
lies. That is where our greatest
oh,
difficulty lies. Our shadow self is the one that holds all the juicy secrets, all the juicy subconscious, all of the memories, and all of the things that make us who we truly are deep on the inside. It's not our expressed self. It's the one that's right closely behind us that we like to tuck away.
I love that, and that's the one that we should be bringing out into the light. You
That's
know,
correct. Yes.
are you doing another book? I hope.
Oh my God, Caroline, you're asking me this the week of pub day where I'm like, am I surviving this? I don't know. If I survive this pub week, yeah, I would like to. I have some ideas. I would like to. I think it might go in a different direction than expected, but I might like to do it. There's, of
Oh,
course,
great. What direction do you know? I'm so curious.
Well, I have a couple of things spooking around in my head. There's, of course, there's the obvious one that would be just so joyful and fun to make, and that would be the follow up to Between the Lines, but to make it a kids edition. Don't you want to know what the future is reading today? I mean, it would be wonderful. So
Yeah.
the kids edition, I think, would be a lot of fun. But then I think for myself personally, I'm really, really deeply interested in hidden realms, and I am really becoming very interested in death, energy exchange, and past lives, I will say.
Oh my God, we have to talk privately. I'm so, it's so funny. It's like, talk about kismet. I'm very interested in that myself.
Good.
I've just, yeah, I've been actually heavily grieving these past 2 months. Had like three major deaths, and I've been thinking about that and what books help me. And actually, horror has helped me a lot. And I do go to psychics a lot. So that's like a really interesting thing, like what book would come up to you at the right time. But beside that, so I definitely like, if you do that, get in touch with me because I want to talk to you about that.
Perfect.
But the other thing I wanted to say was when you're talking about what the future is reading, the most extraordinary thing that ever happened to me is that my son, who is in his early 20s now, we're reading the same books. For me to be able to tell him, you know what, I think you would like this book. Why don't you give it a try? And I don't want to push books on him. It's just sort of, and to have him love a book that I suggested to me is just, it's mind blowing. And now he's suggesting books to me, and you feel the connection across ages. So that actually is a brilliant idea of yours. Like, what is the younger generation reading? I mean,
Yeah, I
and
think
why we should pay attention, because it's not all. I know a lot of people who think, oh, the younger generation, they're reading YA or they're reading, superheroes or something, but that's not true. I
or
actually
people think
asked my
they're not
son,
reading at all, and that's
or they're
untrue.
not reading at all.
Yeah, I have an account that's currently hibernating. It's Subway Book Review Kids, and it's where I
Great.
published all of the interviews with the younger readers, and I published those in color. And I think that we would be so surprised. Every time I speak to them, it's just fantastic. I'll tell you,
Yeah,
Raleigh.
what's the
I'll
we
give
want to
you
share
a
the link.
sampling. I'll give you a sampling. It's Subway Book Review Kids, and it's currently hibernating because kids were not going to school, so I couldn't find them on the subway. But it's coming back. It's Subway Book Review.
Number 2 or TWO?
No, number 2. This one right here on Instagram.
Oh, you've got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's on
great.
Instagram.
You put it in there. Thank you.
But I'll tell you, so Raleigh was reading a book called Invisible Emmy. Look at her.
Oh my God, that's so
she
great.
said the following. It's very short. May I read it?
Yes, please read it. Please read it.
Okay. She said, this is the type of book that boosts your confidence. If you ever feel that nobody notices you, you can compare yourself to Emmy because nobody can see her. People don't care about her. She's that one girl in class who doesn't say anything. Sometimes it's hard to make yourself known. And I really feel like, those who are invisible are the ones who can change the world. Since they have no one to talk to, they spend their time doing hobbies and creating new ideas, and they get a different point of view. Boom. Do you know what I mean?
What is the title of that book? Because I am going to send it to my niece.
Invisible Emmy.
Invisible Enemy. Okay. Invisible. Perfect. See, that is what you do. You're connecting books with people. I can't believe that we're sort of running out of time, but I do have one more question that I have to ask you.
Yes.
I was so completely enthralled that you used to be a brander, because I used to be a professional namer where I would name like cookies and stores and all this kind of stuff. And I think, like, I wanted to ask you, how did being a brander make you look at things differently? And would you say that you yourself have a brand, and if so, what would that brand be? Or do you prefer to think of yourself as brandless because there's more possibility?
Yeah, no, I mean, what a brand is, it means that people form a community around shared values, and they communicate them through text and visually. So Subway Book Review has very strong branding, 100%. It's a very strong brand language. I have a very strong color palette. My photography stands out. If you see a Subway Book Review photo, you know what it is if you're familiar with the project. Branding is very important because it means you're very clear in your expression of who you are and what you stand for. And I've gone away from marketing and advertising, but I did work in those fields. I owned an agency myself for 6 years, and that is part of my background. That's what I did after film school. After I won a film prize, I invested my money into creating a small creative agency and then grew it into a company with many employees and big clients like Nike and the likes. But branding, again, when it's done through the capitalist lens of extraction, that's when it's BS. But branding, when it's done correctly to clarify your expression and your values, then I think it's a beautiful exercise for anyone. And I actually think more writers need to go through the exercise of branding.
Right. That's another thing in your workshop that I want to know about. I have hogged this whole interview instead of taking viewer questions because I had so many things I wanted to ask you. But I encourage viewers, you can still, this is going to be on our website and on our Facebook page. You can still put in comments there. You can still see this. I want to thank you so much, Uli, for being here. I absolutely love what you're doing. And
Thank
I'm
you.
just so excited. I'm going to be stalking you in the subways now.
Beautiful. And I hope that everybody checks out Between the Lines,
Yes.
Stories from the Underground. Get it wherever you get books, ideally an indie bookstore.
A daily in any bookstore. And actually, it's the kind of book you'll want to buy for your friends too.
Yes.
Makes a great Christmas gift or holiday gift because it really speaks to what we all need. So anyway, thank you, Uli. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, our wonderful Mighty Blaze producer, Karen. And we'll see you all next week.